So went out to Umatilla on a very, very hot day. It was during the summer, and all their school leadership came and met with me anyway, which I thought was a great testament to their care of the program. And they described an after-school program that actually started as a 21st century federal grant. I'm sure a lot of you are nodding, you know those. And to be honest, sometimes I have real concern when a program started that way because it was such a robust pool of funding poured into these communities that's very difficult to replicate when they go away. But here was McNairy Heights. They had transitioned out of the 21st century grant program, and they were building the program up with other sources of funding. So this is one of the points of success. They managed to do this. And they created an after-school program just from 3:30 in the afternoon to 5 o'clock. So all they were trying to do was bridge those critical hours that we know about when kids might have nothing to do and could get into trouble before their hardworking families got home to be with them. And they used some really creative staffing. They used a lot of the Title, I think it's Title 4B assistance that they were federally funded to have, and they worked into their work plans working during that after-school program time. And I'm going to get some of this wrong, so if any of you are from federal agencies and I'm saying anything bad, there's nothing bad about this. But and they used those people, they used volunteers, and they hired high school students all to run this after-school program. They used school facilities. They used the computer lab from the school, they used the athletic facilities from the school, and they had developed this program that had really woven into the fabric of that community. So they had people, they basically, when we were asked to give a grant, they were serving 53% of the school population, which I think is really good, 350 kids. By the end of the year that we just granted into, they were serving 70% of the elementary school population, which I just thought was amazing. And they do it for, the budget number that I've last seen is $209,000, which is a lot of money, but it's also, I think, something you can fundraise into. And that included USDA money for food. The kids got I think in Roseburg we call it a snupper, a snack supper. They got enrichment activities. They got homework help and tutoring, one-on-one help. And the enrichment activities sometimes drew the kids there, and then the homework help they really needed. So it was a great combination of things. They did really interesting things. They do really interesting things. The kids learned to clog. They learned robotics. They learned knitting. I guess they have these incredible crocheters. But they also saw math test scores go up and science test scores go up. And they can point to tangible, real increases in those scores. They saw a decrease in criminal activity, and the law enforcement actually credits it entirely to this after-school program. So it, to me, and I could go on and on, the other thing that has been amazing is I've been following them and really interested in their success because they seem to just be doing everything right through a lot of sweat, a lot of perseverance, real commitment at all the top levels of leadership in that community, from the school district superintendent all the way down through, the chief of police, the fire, parks department, city council. Everyone has come to see this, and everyone plays their role. So I think to Sally's point, 2 minutes, I'll say if you would do this to me. It really has gotten into that fabric of the community, and we'll find a way to sustain. And one of the most interesting things is, when you hear projects like this, you hope, gosh, I hope they come back for another grant. But you know what? It doesn't look like they're going to need us. So maybe they will, or maybe they won't. But another success story is that they have really just garnered new sources of support. And so in some ways, OCS has actually taken probably the lead role in funding this group. And may continue to do so in the future, but they're able to find other new sources that they had never thought about before, probably because of OCS leadership and getting them there. So I hope that wasn't your story, Megan. No. And so just to pull out the nuggets from there, obviously for us, a successful project has to be rural. We only do grants in communities of 30,000 or less. We have to understand and believe in your plan to get there. So what do you base your model on? Why do you think it'll work? Does the budget make sense? Does the population you're serving have a voice, so we know it's an appropriate model? Is it going to sustain beyond our dollars? The hardest question, the one I know you actually stay up worrying about, so it's kind of a silly question, but it's a very good question. And really, are you able to show us that what you're doing fits the needs of the community? So has the community stood up to vet it next to you? And we look, just like Sally said, for signs of in-kind support, for partners at the table. Obviously, cash is really helpful, but it looks different everywhere, as Sally said too. And this particular program in Umatilla really showed all those things, and they're well on their way with or without us, which is probably the best thing of all. Is it okay?
I must be perceived as a mean professor. Carla, you want to be the next to risk your.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me talking? Okay, so maybe I'll just color outside the lines too and just sit. How does that sound? Oh, maybe I'll, no, I just got up, didn't I?
Nice, yeah.
Thank you. I'm really eager to talk to you today. As Tom said, I'm with the Northwest Area Foundation. We're based in St. Paul, Minnesota. We were laughing about that earlier. I sort of have that little bit of Minnesota kind of accent, sort of reminiscent of the movie Fargo, but I try to suppress it best I can. Our foundation works in an 8-state region, so we're in Minnesota, Iowa, North and South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. And I have the great pleasure of being out in Oregon quite a bit. It's actually one of my favorite places to come to. Don't tell anybody that I said that. The foundation has been around about 80 years, and as Tom indicated, we are the legacy of the Great Northern Railway. So the Great Northern Railway ran to these 8 states, and in fact, many of your small rural communities may exist simply because that railroad was built, and a lot of these small towns popped up as either stations where the train stopped, and more importantly, James J. Hill, when he ran the railway, that was what he used this a lot to bring ag innovation to all the rural communities in this 8-state region. So he used to kind of get things like, I'm going to make something up because I don't really know exactly what things he put on there, but say like a combine or a reaper or something like that. He'd toss it on the train and then bring it all the way through to all the rural communities in North and South Dakota in particular. That's probably a lot of the reason why there's so much farming in those 2 states. So a little bit of history, I just thought I'd fill you in on that. The foundation continues to this day to be committed to rural communities, as well as we do grant making in reservation communities. There's about 72 reservations in the 8-state region where we work, as well as we do funding in urban communities as well. I've been at the foundation about 9 years, and when I first started, that would have been in about 2002, we were actually doing our grant making very differently than we do it today, and I just want to give you a little bit of that context. This is sort of my way of trying to tell a story, but I'm really bad at telling stories, so it just kind of builds on itself or does whatever it does. But we had concentrated a lot of our grant making into place-based grant making, so we just did it in a few places, and now, 9 years later, or actually for the foundation, it's been more than 10 years later, we learned a lot of lessons from doing that, and one of them in particular that it's really, that was kind of a big bet to make, that we really needed to spread our resources on a lot of different ways. So one of the things I did actually do was bring a copy of our new strategic plan, and it's 4 pages, not 1. But outside the box again, or outside the lines. But I think it does a really great job of explaining how we came to be where we are today, wanting to get back into traditional grant making, as well as really hone our work so that we're focusing on what's really important to us, which is reducing poverty and building on sustainable prosperity. Now those, actually I was having lunch with a few people today, and they're like, what does that all mean? And hopefully my story will kind of explain a little bit of what that means. We have changed our focus so that we're primarily focusing on asset and wealth building and on low-income populations. So that means funding such things as financial education, microenterprise development. I see Valerie back there. We do some alternative investments in the region, but primarily we're really interested in seeing that ways that we can look at and measure that assets and wealth are being built for the most vulnerable among us, or the lowest income people in our communities. Now the story I wanted to tell about this, and a success story, is really not about Oregon, but it's in Montana, because I thought that'd be really safe to talk about Montana as opposed to Oregon, so if the story doesn't resonate with you, then I'm not going to get tomatoes or wine grapes thrown at me or something like that. But anyway, we have been funding some work in Montana that's around public policy. Because I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to just sort of talk with you about today is, the importance of public policy in all this kind of work that we do. And when you get a chance to read this thoroughly, and I'll send you the test out and see if you got all the answers right on our strategic plan, I mean, we're really seeing that in order to achieve asset and wealth building outcomes, that you really need to have public policy as a piece, as well as you need to have leadership and capacity building being part of the work that you do. So back to Montana, they actually had some really horrible predatory lending laws in Montana. And predatory lenders, you all familiar with that, you know, the payday lenders where people go in and end up having to pay this huge fee to actually basically cash their paycheck and then turn around and pay fees to, you know, bills and bills and bills. In Montana, they were charging upwards of 400% interest rates. And so they've been trying to get this predatory lending law, basically the ceiling dropped, and they've been doing this for years and years. And ultimately what I think really led to the success of this initiative was that it was really the nonprofit sector coming together. And who comprises that nonprofit sector that came together? Really the community organizing. That's a great piece of the work that needs to be done if we're going to see some changes happen in our communities and in our states where we're having laws and regulations that are more beneficial to the populations that we care about. So the community organizers come into the picture, as well as organizations like Rural Dynamics. They do work around earned income tax credit, VitaSites, familiar with those, where you do volunteer income tax preparation to help low-income populations. So they were part of the puzzle. The Montana Home Ownership Project came in, and they're all working to actually go out and educate the community, sign petitions so that this new law, which was going to drop the rate down to 36%, 400 down to 36%, and had to go around and get signatures. And actually, I'm happy to report last year, in 2010, they were successful at having that happen and got that ceiling dropped down to 36%. And it was because, in my opinion, of the nonprofit sector, the leadership, the capacity that's built, the organizing, and the focus on policies and regulations that can really help basically pathways for building assets for low-income populations. So not the greatest storyteller on earth, I admit to that, but one of the things that I did want to leave you with is that one of the things that I'd be remiss, I guess, in not conveying to you that I too am from a rural area and have been for most of my life. So this work in rural areas is really important to me, and you know, I've seen lots of stuff in my, yes, it is a half a century, yes. A little bit more than that, that I've seen a lot of really interesting things happen in rural areas, and have the great joy of participating in them as working for a nonprofit and as a practitioner, and am very pleased to be able to be representative of a foundation that can hopefully help other states really kind of bring together the network of nonprofits to address some of the kind of wrongs that we're seeing in our states and in our regions. So thank you.